I've done it again. I've purchased another mystery PC from eBay on the cheap, and of course it had to be wrapped in your very own genuine Toyota car parts bubble wrap. Now if I recall correctly, this is supposed to be a basic HP pre-built, only this one is slimmer from left to right than the previous OEM we looked at from eBay. This means that it's not going to fit standard size graphics cards. We'll need something extra narrow to squeeze in here. And if you're at all wondering what the heck I'm talking about regarding the previous OEM, be sure to check out the video linked in the description or via the card up top. For now, let's get to it. Are you ready? Stay with me.
Factor makes meeting your nutrition goals easier than ever by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep. And these things are super yummy. I've had several myself, and the fact that they're never frozen really helps preserve the flavor. They have great chicken meals, Mexican cuisine, and even seafood. All fresh. This shrimp meal, by the way, was awesome, and I'm from Florida, so I know good seafood when I taste it. And here's how it all works. Set up a plan ranging from 4 to 18 meals per week, select between dozens of options and add-ons, and select any dietary restrictions you'd like included. Say keto or vegan or even calorie smart. You can amp up your meals with smoothies that my kids love, by the way, and boom, you got a super healthy meal plan that'll keep you out of the grocery store. All you've got to do to prep is toss it in the oven or microwave. Shopping for groceries with 2 kids can be a bit of a nightmare, so anything to keep the wife out of the store is a plus. But these meals from Factor also taste great. There's only upside here. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code Salazar50 for 50% off your first Factor box. Again, that's offer code Salazar50 to save big time on your next meal plan.
You'll have to pardon the neighbors. They decided to mow their lawn the moment I clicked record for this clip, and I'm too stubborn to quit now. We're too far ahead. Remember, kids, while working with sharp blades, never cut toward you. This bubble wrap continues to be an arduous task to remove. Ooh, I just realized I might have purchased a Core i3 pre-built. That's not particularly enticing. The reason why I call this a mystery PC is the seller's description doesn't reveal much in the way of specifications. I'm more or less jumping to this hoping that there's something good inside. In reality, I should have seen that this was a Core i3. There is one photo that reveals the Core i3 sticker. It was a bit vague, but it also should have been listed in the description, if you ask me. But that's my fault. It was there. I didn't see it. I probably still would have purchased it though, because I got it for so cheap. Like I said, about 40 bucks. The seller's description only states that the system powers on, but refuses to get past this screen here. And if you're familiar with PCs, you'll know that this is really only due to one of two things, either a defective storage drive or a storage drive just not attached at all. Maybe you don't have Windows on the drive. That could also be a reason why you see this. Some of these older systems can throw up some finicky codes and screens upon boot, but in our experience with the Lenovo system, all we needed to do was connect a drive that had Windows loaded on it, and we were golden. Let's take a look at what we have inside here. We're gonna remove the single Phillips screw. I am not expecting much here. Let's see if it's, actually, it's pretty clean. There are a couple dust bunnies. This one's not as clean as a Lenovo rig, but it's not bad. I mean, considering this thing is like, what, 10 plus years old? I'll take it. It does look like a single stick of RAM is included. I will take that. But unfortunately, it's only a 4 gig stick. I suppose we shouldn't be surprised since this is being paired with a Core i3. These systems always had very cool modular swinging doors. For whatever reason, if you wanted to take your disk drive out, you could do that very easily here. Or if you wanted to secure it in place, just tuck it in like so. We've got a wind tunnel here, which doesn't appear to be mechanically fastened to anything. And that reveals our very small CPU cooler underneath. This is definitely a custom shape. You can tell they designed this specifically for this case and its tolerances. You can also see that the fan is not attached to the fins, it's actually attached further back here. And surprisingly, this system seems to have decent airflow. Not optimal, but yeah, decent, better than what I'd expect from an OEM of this caliber. The power supply appears to be a roughly 240 watt unit, not bad for, again, this caliber system. And if we pull back on this, check it out, you can see it's somewhat custom shape. A larger fan sits at the back here, but it's really only cooling this half of the system. Behind that, on this side, it's just cooling the case. Something else I just noticed, this is actually an inverted rig. So the motherboard is proprietary, it's shaped differently than the conventional ATX or MATX board, but the PCIe slots are off to the bottom right, which means our graphics card, if we install one, will have to be flipped upside down. Just something to note. It also, again, has to be narrower than the standard width graphics card because this is a very slim case left to right. So we're looking at about half the actual thickness of a standard tower. And if you went to, I don't know, elementary school, middle school, high school here in the States, you probably saw many of these. In fact, this could be your elementary or middle school PC. Maybe you were using this PC when you were in school. What are the odds? Jokes aside for the price, I think this is a worse value than the Lenovo system for sure. I mean, this is an i3 versus an i5. This is also a narrower system, which means we have to work around some constraints, obviously the graphics card being the primary one there. The power supply in this is also fairly limiting. The motherboard requires some split cable connectors for power, so you won't find a standard 24 pin or 20 pin or anything like that. In fact, there's multiple 6 and 4 pin connections throughout this board, which means we can't simply swap this for, I don't know, a conventional modern power supply and run off of modern cabling. So I have no choice but to keep this in the system, but if we want to add a discrete card that relies on supplemental PCIe power, we're gonna have to add our own secondary power supply that's only supplying power to the card. So it's gonna get pretty janky, but I definitely wanna try that later in the video. For now though, let's try firing it up as is. I'll go ahead and throw in an SSD just to roll that out since we know that this is probably all it's gonna need. It should, in theory, boot into Windows since Windows is already loaded on this drive. Now, I know this looks strange, but because of the different cable connector constraints with this pre-built, I only have DisplayPort out. I can't connect my smaller graphics card that has HDMI out to the system because it's a narrower system than the card allows. So I've just connected it to one of my monitors. For some reason it has DisplayPort at the rear, but not HDMI. I'm not sure what the thought process was there. Let's go ahead and power it on. Probably just gonna update some drivers since admittedly this is a different platform than where it was originally. But yeah, I called it ThinkCenter because that was the Lenovo system it was in. Now it's an HP Compaq and it looks good. We are in. No problemo. So that is super cool. Very appreciative of the seller's honesty here. They showed us that the system did power on and just wouldn't load into Windows. And in fact, all that was needed was a storage drive with Windows loaded on it to actually get into the OS. So that was a very quick fix, if you want to call it that, but it really wasn't a fix. It was just one missing part, a bring your own drive scenario, which is actually quite common in this space. But now, here is where things get especially interesting. See, rather than throw in a standard GTX 1050 or 1050 Ti with no supplemental power required, and just kind of, drilling into the case to make this fit because this is a standard width card, I want to go with something totally out of the box. This is an RTX 4060 Slim from Gigabyte. And believe it or not, on paper, this should fit perfectly in our case because, well, look how small she is. This has most of the standard features of a conventional RTX 4060. You should expect the same CUDA core count, the same memory, still 8 gigs on board, but it's been slimmed down to a very questionable size. And this is actually my favorite part. Gigabyte also includes a slim rear I/O shield for use in slim cases like our HP Compaq. So it'll be just a few Phillips screws, a good old swapperoo, and simply retighten. That's more like it. Now, there's only one other issue. Like I mentioned, this does still have a supplemental 8-pin here, and we're gonna have to adapt this to a separate power supply. Obviously not ideal, not something I recommend for this particular pre-built, but there are some pre-builts out there that come with an extra PCIe supplemental 8-pin. This would be perfect to throw into one of those, your typical Dell Optiplexes, toss in a new graphics card and call it a day. I think this is a great candidate for that if you can work around this additional power connector.
A few moments later.
Oh geez, I totally forgot about CPU cooler clearance. Are we gonna have enough space? I don't exactly know. Is that gonna fit? Oh my gosh, it does. And the card is literally touching the CPU cooler. Wow, what a fit. But if you thought that was jank, just wait until you see what we've in store now. So 24 pin with a jumper and a secondary power supply just for our graphics card. So now, the moment we turn on the second power supply, this card will be getting supplemental power on top of what it'll draw from the PCIe slot. A bit complicated, we'll just power both on at roughly the same time and cross our fingers. This wouldn't be my first rodeo messing with jank hardware combinations, but I digress. I'm turning into Jay. Here we go, 3, 2, 1. So far, so good. The card fans are spinning. I'm Not hearing beeps. Okay, that was weird. It powered off and then powered right back up again. I'm really hoping this works. Come on. There it is. Wow, and look at that, straight into Windows. So that at least confirms that the card is working at idle conditions because we are connected to it as of now, which is why I can use our portable monitor. We will update those drivers. Then we'll run Firestrike and Time Spy from 3D Mark and see how this fares. I wanna know what you guys think, since we have what I presume to be a much worse CPU paired with a much better graphics card than the Lenovo setup. Do you think we'll score higher or lower than that Lenovo system? Remember, that was like a Core i5 3570-ish and a GTX 1050. This is a Core i3. I'm expecting from a same generation, maybe a little older, but with an RTX 4060 this time around. I think we'll do better. I think the graphics card is gonna pull a lot more of the weight this time around, but I've been very wrong before. So let's take care of drivers and then fire up the benchmarks. Oh, and of course, we can't forget about the other differentiating factor here. This only has 4 gigs of DDR3, whereas our Lenovo system had 8. This might need to be upgraded. This is like bare bones for Windows 10. Honestly surprised the OS even functions this way. So we might have to add an extra stick if we have problems running the benchmark. And if application load times have anything to say about the performance of the system, we're in for a world of hurt. Uh-oh, that was a really bad frame time spike. But I was about to say, this frame rate on average is actually really good considering how crappy our Core i3 is. I suspect the frame time spike was a result of how bad the CPU is, but the 4060 appears to be pulling most of the weight here, which is as expected. And remember, this is a 1440p synthetic, which ironically might be helping our CPU here since the resulting frame rate is expected to be lower, which means the CPU in theory should be less involved. Even if it's a graphics test, the more frames there are, the more the CPU has to play a role. So this is what 10-year-old plus Core i3 CPU architecture gets you. Obviously nothing too exciting. So this was bad, but it wasn't anywhere near as bad as our Lenovo rig with the 1050. Despite how weak and pitiful our Core i3 3220 is, we still managed to score better than 10% of all submitted results in Time Spy, which is a very modern DX12 synthetic by comparison, right? What I want to do now is flashback to Firestrike. 1080p synthetic, I think we'll do much better there. The 4060 will be right in the zone, and our Core i3 might actually keep up, or maybe it won't because the frame rate will be much higher. We'll see. Ah, yes, 90, well, it was 90 FPS, now it dipped to like 70, 80. Okay, we're getting back to the 90s again. This is just so much better, super fluid. A huge difference between even 1080p and 1440p with the system this old. Now, while this is running, I do have to say, this combination of hardware makes absolutely no sense, and there's really no reason why you should do this, especially for a system this old. If you could justify a $300-ish RTX 4060 Slim, like this one here from Gigabyte, in a $100 or $200 Dell Optiplex, maybe a much more modern one, then fine, so be it. You could put together maybe a $500-ish sleeper system, but for something this old, I mean, you've just got such a massive bottleneck to overcome that it really makes no sense to spend 3+ times the value of the system on just the graphics card. Actually, my math was all out of whack. It's like 6 times the value of the system. What on earth am I doing here? And would you look at that? Better than 48% of all submitted results. We are right in the sweet spot with this synthetic, so not bad. It could be way better, and this hardware makes no sense, but not bad.
If you're shopping for your next power supply, look no further than Enermax's Revolution DFX units. With their high static pressure, 6-pole motor fans, and patented self-cleaning technology, enjoy peace of mind from a PSU built with safety and durability at the forefront. And of course, each unit's built for the latest generation of graphics cards with up to 2 12-volt high power lines, each with optional 8+8 to 12+4 for additional expansion. Revolution DFX is ATX 3.0 and PCIe 5.0 ready, super compact, fully modular, and ready to rumble. Find them in wattages up to 1600 by clicking the link below.
Not the best way to end things, but still had a ton of fun. It was really cool to see this 4060 just chugging along with a very weak Core i3 Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge CPU. It's not something you see every day. I thought the pairing was unique. Unfortunately, we had to run that external power supply, but all in all, had a very fun time. And I will say, if I come across another deal like this, I will not be able to pass it up. I have an itch now for the older stuff. This older hardware is just so nostalgic for me. And there's something there's something cool about it. I gotta say, just like in a time where RGB didn't really matter, OEMs were just worried about market share and grabbing as much of an audience as they could. I mean, the fact that they were selling these en masse to schools like my own growing up, I don't know. I really like them. Maybe we'll throw Windows XP on one of these machines and run some old school games in the future. If you enjoyed this one, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you have not already. Check out relevant links in the video description, including where to buy something like this if you want to shop on eBay. I'll also have the 4060 from Gigabyte linked below if that suits your fancy for whatever reason. And stay tuned for the next one. My name is Greg. Thanks for learning with me.